Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Right off the bat, let me say apologies to the family for the tardy postings of last night and today. Unfortunately, I've been dealing with a little bit of a bug, but it is winter and that is to be expected. Though no matter what, neither rain nor snow nor physical infirmity shall keep the Professor from giving these white supremacists that business. So that said, let's get to today's midday afternoon briefing.
I will continue to speak up for families around the world who are seeking justice, whether they are displaced in refugee camps or they are hiding under their beds somewhere like I was, waiting for the bullets to stop. The 9-year-old me would be disappointed if I didn't talk about the victims of conflict. I didn't come to Congress to be silent. I came to Congress to be their voice. And my leadership and voice will not be diminished if I am not on this committee for one term. My voice will get louder and stronger, and my leadership will be celebrated around the world as it has been. Take your vote or not. I am here to stay, and I am here to be a voice against harms around the world and advocate for a better world.
Ilhan Omar has predictably become a target of the increasingly erratic Republican majority in the House of Representatives. She's on a couple of committees, but the GOP wanted to make some headlines for themselves and do a little bit of good old white right virtue signaling by kicking her off the Foreign Affairs Committee. And they, of course, brought up an old tweet of hers from years ago as their alleged justification for it. Because, hey, whatever it takes to get those headlines, right? Meanwhile, noted anti-Semite and insurrection cheerleader Marjorie Taylor Greene has been put on the Homeland Security Committee because that's where you want to put a woman who cheers on an insurrection. While the man who seems to be her racist soulmate, Paul Gosar, whose own family can't stand him and has denounced him publicly, he's getting some plum committee assignments of his own as well. So obviously, this is the usual power games going on inside Washington. Today's briefing, however, is not about the political inside the Beltway games played by both the major parties, nor is it about the palace intrigue of the House of Representatives. This briefing is about Ilhan Omar having gotten her wake-up call, though I'm pretty sure she hit the snooze button. Now, this is a woman who has tried for so many years to have it both ways. On the one hand, she's been trying to be a creature of political self-interest, and on the other hand, she's had to deal with the abuse that comes with being a black person in America. She, of course, is Somali, and like so many black immigrants, she's tried to defy the description black. She's very reluctant to allow herself to be described that way. You can probably count on one hand the number of times she's described herself like that. Everybody else does, but she's reluctant to do it herself. She presents herself primarily as a Muslim on everything. Race seems to largely not even exist in her mind. Whenever she talks about any issue, it's always framed in the context of Muslims, Palestinians, refugees, immigrants. She said it herself, and you heard it. She's not a spokesperson for the black community. She's not here to represent the black experience. She's a spokesperson for foreigners, refugees, immigrants. That's who she represents. In her self-serving speech protesting having been kicked off the Foreign Affairs Committee, she spent the bulk of her time lamenting the treatment and condition of people outside the United States. That was deliberate. As Ilhan Omar sees it, her constituency are people outside the United States. She talked about her leadership, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean, being celebrated around the world. She's not boasting that her leadership, quote-unquote, is being celebrated in her own home district. In fact, she's not even talking about her leadership being celebrated in the United States. She says celebrated around the world. She said she would continue to be a voice against harms around the world. Well, if she wanted to do that, she could most conveniently start with being a voice against harms in her own home district. But then again, why would she do that? When fellow Somali Mohammed Noor was targeted and prosecuted for killing Justine Damond, where was Ilhan Omar at? Well, she was actually supporting the prosecution. Because the DA was a Democrat, and Democrats themselves wanted to hold the line for the thugs in blue, so long as they were white supremacists, that is. Everyone understood that the entire plan the Democrats had was to work with the Republicans to maintain a license to kill for white supremacists with badges, while making examples of black officers. letting them know that unless you kill a black person, you're going to be prosecuted. Oh, you'll find real quick that qualified immunity doesn't exist for you. And the whole doubt that whether or not they could get you convicted because you got a badge, if you're black, that's not going to be an impediment. They can get you convicted just like any other black person. The uprisings of 2020 began in Minneapolis. That's Ilhan Omar's home base, so where the hell was she at? It was exactly 4 years ago when she made her all about the Benjamins tweet. But why is this woman, who is in the United States and a member of the U.S. Congress, making it a point that she's going to pretend as if she's on the floor of the UN? First of all, Omar's obsession with the condition of people on the other side of the planet, while totally ignoring the condition of black people right here in the U.S., shows that as far as she's concerned, she's representing people overseas. She has a fundamental contempt for black people in America. For her, it's a burden and undesirable to have to represent people in the United States who voted for her. She doesn't see that as her job. Her persistent criticism of Israel, while totally valid, is also deliberately being done in a way meant to separate her from being described as black. The entire frame of her Israel comments is always done strictly on the grounds of the Jewish-Muslim conflict. She's extremely reluctant to bring race into the conversation at all, because if she does, then she herself is in a bind. She can't claim to be Arab, and she'll be damned if she's going to be black, so she's trying to be some non-racial Muslim, and not only is that not how the world sees her, that's really not even how she sees herself, but she thinks she's better than American black people, so by maintaining that separation, in her mind, she's also maintaining what she sees as her own superiority. And she does this knowing that it's only hurting herself. If she's going to ignore her own constituents just to attack Israel, and that's undoubtedly what she's doing, then she would have been far better off framing her criticism in terms of race, because that's what's going on here, and that's what Israel fears. But Ilhan Omar knows that if she did that, then she would also be attacking her own non-blackness. She'd also open herself up to having to talk about how Arab Muslim countries treat black citizens and immigrants. And she's made up her mind she's not going to do that. She's Muslim first, so not going to be doing anything that brings criticism or critique or any sort of disparaging comments on Muslims. Oh, the tribalism is strong with her, and she doesn't want to be seen as sticking up for black people. In her mind, she has escaped being black. That's why she keeps talking about this. I'm sticking up for people all over the world. I'm speaking for people all over the world. She's a Muslim cosmopolite. That means citizen of the world. She probably thinks that she's going to get herself a Nobel Prize one day. She certainly has delusions that she's some sort of international figure. And so Ilhan Omar is choosing to die on a hill for nothing. Today, she's needing all the help she can get. She pays scant, pathetic lip service to the GOP's anti-black racism, but her citing the racism against Barack Obama, that was due to his race. Not religion, and certainly not the continental origin of his father. The problem is not that Barack Obama's father was from Kenya, is that his father was black. She just keeps on trying to have it both ways. Because she needs support from black people now. That's the only constituency that has any numbers or are willing to stand with her. It's absolutely no coincidence that practically all the people in Congress who bothered to show up to support her last week were almost entirely black. She would have had basically no support at all if she had waited to see if Muslim members of Congress would back her up. So she sees black people as the only support she can get at this particular moment. Otherwise, she'd be swinging in the wind with nobody. If Omar thinks that she's supposed to be the voice for everyone except black people in the U.S., fine. Then let the people who she truly wants to represent speak for her. Let them vote for her. Let them show her support and in the process do something. Because over here in the land of black empowerment, we don't believe in supporting people who don't support us. And for all the speaking up for Muslims that Omar has done, for all these overseas victims, where are the overseas Muslims at to help her and stick up for her? For someone who spends her every waking moment speaking for all these foreigners and Muslims abroad, I don't see anyone giving a whit about her, ever. Where are the Muslims outside of Rashida Tlaib who have said one word on her behalf? She wants to take up for all of these other people outside the United States, but not one of them are coming to her rescue now. She didn't think this one through at all. Oh, by the way, on a side note, there was also a truly bizarre spectacle. Well, considering that it was Alexandria Cortez, it wasn't bizarre so much as normal for her. And of course, being Alexandria Cortez, now you knew she was going to make this all about herself. She would never miss an opportunity like that. There could be a dead baby in the street. She'd still find a way to make it all about herself. The little teapot decided to chime in on the subject herself from the floor of the Congress, and as she always does, she made it all about herself. Omar was the one getting kicked off the committee, but almost immediately Cortez complained and whined about Paul Gosar's anime meme decapitating her and about hateful comments from other members of Congress, and she was putting all kinds of extras on it. I mean, she was going way the hell overboard, literally jumping, bouncing, and swinging her arms in the air. I thought she was having an epileptic seizure for a moment, the way that she was sitting here just jerking and swinging and jumping and all the rest of it. She seemed to have lost control of all motor reflexes. For a moment there, I thought she was going to go to the bathroom right there on herself, the way she was jumping. That's how she looked. She did all of that because she wanted to make sure that of all the Democrats who were on camera objecting to Omar getting kicked off the Foreign Affairs Committee, at the very least, the one who the white media would play the most video of would be Cortez and her wild histrionics. She was determined to be the star of the show no matter what. See, this is the problem with the cross-racial alliance that so many black people have been pursuing. Black people are being attacked, but you got people like Cortez who stand up and say, well, it's all about them instead. Cortez has categorically ignored black New Yorkers in her own district since her very first campaign. She's pretended that black people don't even exist, certainly not in her home district. Whenever the subject of conversation is black people, Cortez is the first one to pop up, or rather jump up, and start screeching and swinging her arm to the top of her lungs using her Fran Drescher voice to say, well, don't forget about brown people. So this is the fiasco that's going on. A selfish politician who has delusions of being an international figure, and some other self-serving plutocrats who are simply looking to misuse any situation to promote themselves and their own interests at the expense of black people's. Ilhan Omar's problem is that she's chosen to be a political party of one. She runs for office in the U.S., but declares her actual job is to represent refugees and immigrants from all over the world. She's a Muslim. Until the GOP beats up on her for being black, then for half a moment she sticks a toe across the line and says, well, in some circles I've been called black. I'm not going to say that the GOP is right because there's no good guys in this fight. There's no one to cheer for here. Neither the reprobates in the GOP nor the unrealistic cosmopolite Omar are representing black empowerment. Both Omar and the GOP are pursuing their own interests, and neither one has anything to do with us. The white media wants us to care about this because they're hoping that we will re-engage with a process that has nothing for us. But there's nothing here that constitutes a responsibility or obligation on our part. The truth is, it's nothing more than the same old petty arguments between the same gallery of crooks and rogues about which one of them will have the privilege of ignoring us. Ilhan Omar has definitely made it clear she's not fighting to be our voice. She said it herself, repeatedly. She's the voice for people outside the U.S., people who don't even live here. Well, in that case, then, that's who she needs to look to for support. She's framed this entirely as a foreign debate and not a domestic issue, so that being the case, I say let her have it her own way. Oh, I'm not going to say that we should not support Ilhan Omar. What I'm saying is we should support her the exact same way she's always supported us. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Chris MC, Gilda Dallas, Sandra, Stephen Lyles, and Latara. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.